Hi, everyone. This is Raquel.
Hi, and this is Jennifer.
Welcome to Madness Cafe.
This is a feminist podcast where we talk about women's issues, politics, and health and wellness.
And where those issues intersect. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Madness Cafe. We are joined today by our special guest, Hayley Curtis, who is the founder of Soulful Journaling, where she provides women with guidance and support to help them dig deeper in their journaling journeys to cultivate true healing and transformation. Welcome to the podcast.
I think we should just jump right in and why don't you tell the listeners your story? How did you get on this journaling adventure?
Awesome. Let's jump right in. For me, I never would have expected myself to become a journaler. In primary school, high school, I always just despised anything to do with writing or literacy or reading. It just was not my thing. And I'd even said to myself, like, oh, I'll never be one of those people who can, write in a journal and keep a diary, even though I wished that I could be. And so I'd sort of created it as something that would never be part of who I was. And I had always, while I was growing up, I'd always just had a pretty cruisy life. Everything, I was a really positive person. Everything just seemed to flow for me in life. And so I never had to stop to question anything, or was just sort of cruising up until my early 20s. And what ended up happening was when I was about 21, 22, I started to become quite unwell. It was a really slow process, and my body just slowly started showing signs of pain and lethargy and those sorts of things. And what ended up happening was, over about a 5-year period, was that my body and my internal organs actually started slowly shutting down. Found myself at the age of 25 unable to get out of bed anymore. Because it was such a slow process, it sort of crept up on me, when you're just not feeling very well and you're like, oh, I can push through. I can push through. At the time, I was a full-time primary school teacher. I think you call it an elementary teacher over there. And I was also running an online business and doing a whole heap of other things. And I was doing that. I was just pushing through. I was like, you're fine. You can keep going. You can keep going. And then I suddenly found myself I could not keep going anymore. And my whole life as I knew it started crumbling around me and fell apart. And what I ended up discovering was, I thought that I was a person that knew who she was, and I thought that I had this strong identity and felt like I had really strong self-worth. But as soon as all of these things, like my job, I couldn't go to work anymore. I no longer was appearing like what I was used to seeing in the mirror. I could no longer do like my wifey type things that I would do for my husband. All of these things that I had placed my worth and identity in were suddenly gone. And I was left not knowing who I was. Wow. I was left just a shell of a human who absolutely despised herself. And I found out that I actually didn't have self-worth. I found out that I didn't actually have a strong identity. I just placed my identity and my worth in all of these external factors that as soon as they were gone, I was left saying, well, who am I without being able to achieve things, and put a lot of my worth in achievements. And I loved my job, but I took a lot of worth from like, oh, I can be the best teacher. I can be a really good wife. I can be this and this and this. And without them, I realized, who the heck am I? At the same time as this identity crisis going on, I also started experiencing some really out of control anxiety. And I was having anxiety attacks multiple times a day, which really shook me. I'd never experienced anything like that in my life. I had really lost hope. I'd lost hope for wanting to keep going. My inner dialogue was just all negative, and I just couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And there was at this moment in time when I realized that I actually couldn't see myself keep putting one foot in front of the other. I had this little tug deep in my soul that said to me that I had to put pen to paper. This is this lady who had labeled herself as, I'm not a writer, I don't do that kind of thing, but I just had this tug. And this tiny little bit of strength that I had left, I used to put pen to paper. And I decided I was going to journal because I thought that, well, if I can get all of this out of here because I had so much swirling. If I could take it out of here and put it on paper, maybe I can begin to understand and I can find my way forward. Maybe I can find who I am and rebuild this identity. And so I started journaling in 2016, having no idea how to journal. All I knew was that I needed to write. I started without knowing what to do. I just made a small commitment to myself that I was just going to rock up to this journal for 5 minutes a day and write 2 sentences. That's where I started because I couldn't do any more than that. That's all I could commit to. What ended up happening was so far beyond what I set out to do. In the pages of my journals, I did find myself again. I fell back in love with myself and I rebuilt an identity based on who I am instead of what I can do. I was able to sift through those thoughts and I was really seeking to understand myself. And what happened was I was able to calm my soul and get clarity. And once I'd gotten all those anxious thoughts sort of at bay and calmed and I understood, then I cleared the way for some real inner work. And I just started peeling back the layers and the false beliefs, all of these labels I'd accumulated over my life where the world was telling me who I was. And I instead got to choose. It's now been 6 years since I started doing that. I have really completely reinvented myself and not even reinvented myself. I've come back home to myself. And I now am a woman who knows who she is, loves who she is, has such clarity and direction. And now I have this beautiful business where I help guide other women to do the same and peel back those layers.
Hayley, do you remember on that first day of journaling, what did you write about?
What I wrote about was I opened it up and I read it to a group that I was running, and I'm trying to remember what it said. I was literally writing like, I am petrified, I'm scared, I don't know who I am and I don't know where I'm going, but I'm here. Like I sort of made this declaration that I'm here, this is a space, like, and asking for that guidance. And that was it. And the entry was about this big, one little pager, and that was where it started.
What's your process like now? Do you write for longer than 5 minutes now, and do you still write every day?
At the moment, I tend to write every day. Sometimes I might miss a day here and there, but I definitely no longer write for 5 minutes. I'm more of a 45 to 60 minute kind of gal. I will just write pages and pages. I do have quite a process now that tends to be my daily way of writing. I always start with gratitude. So I'm a morning journaler. Some people journal at different times of the day, but I like to do it first thing in the morning. Start with writing 5 specific things that I'm grateful for. Like I get real specific to try and find the gold within the mundane and the monotonous. So I start with that. And then I go into a journaling prompt. At the moment, I'm exploring more of my own journaling prompts to help me with being able to reflect on the journey I'm taking others on. But I'll choose some sort of prompt and then I write into my day. So I write in quite a prayerful way and I just write into how I want to feel, how I'm going to cultivate those feelings, anything that I'm processing at the current moment and how I can go about gaining more clarity, and then just declaring things over myself and just feeling into it. That's sort of my style at the moment.
Were there any people who stood out to you as teachers or people that were mentors to you or reading that you did to get you on this path, or was this all self-exploration on your own?
It was really self-exploration for me. I did use some books as catalysts in the beginning when I really didn't know what to write about. So like in the very beginning, I think I picked up like a Joyce Meyer daily devotional as like a catalyst, you know, just to hear some positive things. And then I would write down what she said that stood out to me. And then I would say, okay, well, how does that resonate with me? Or what does that make me want to do in my own life? And I'd write about that as like a catalyst, or I'd have a personal development book about something that I was dealing with and I'd highlight when I was reading, and then I'd use those highlighted passages as sort of prompts, I guess, to say like, okay, like that really resonated with my soul. How? And how can I put that into action? So I did use a bit of that in the beginning, and I still do that now. If I'm reading a really good book, I'll still do that. But for the most part, it was a very self-reflection and and learning to ask myself the questions. I'd never even given myself the time of day to ask myself questions. And like even simple things, like I didn't even know what I liked and what I didn't like. I thought that I did. Like you have this idea of, oh yeah, I know what I like to do for fun. But then I realized it was actually what everybody else liked to do for fun. And I started going on this real self-discovery. So I'd even just put prompts at the top of my page, like, what does Hayley like to do for fun? What drains Hayley's energy? All those sorts of things to just make it fun for myself to discover those things.
You have a lot of prompts on your website. You have the ebooks that you have of your different prompts and things like that. How do you develop all those prompts? I mean, does it ever get hard for you? Like, what's your process with all that?
So most of the prompts, pretty much all of the prompts, unless someone comes to me and asks for a specific thing that they're dealing with, everything else is really stuff that I've worked through myself. I just sit down and I think, what has been an impactful question to ask myself and what have I worked through? And that's where the prompts usually do come from. If I'm ever stuck, I go to my big stack of past journals and I actually just open up to a random page and I read through what I was processing at that time. And then I write a prompt from that. So the prompts are very personal. They are, that's why I've called it Soulful Journaling, because it really is from my soul to yours. And what I realized was back when I was going through all of these things, I thought I was really alone in it because the people in my immediate circle, I didn't see them struggling with the same sorts of things. But what I have found from the platform I've created is that there are so many women who have journeyed through those things, and that if it was an issue for me and if I found it hard, somebody else would have found that hard as well. So I've just sort of learned to trust the process. And I write from a point of view of, I'm writing prompts for me 5 years ago. What did she need? This woman that was lost and wanted to learn to love herself and had this urge to come home to herself. What did she need to know in order to get there? And that's really where I write the prompts from, that space.
When you were going through this process, you said your physical health was so deteriorated. Was your physical health tied to this journey on your journaling as you got clear on who you were? Did that help your physical health?
It definitely helped in energetic ways. So I wouldn't say that it helped in physical ways, like I healed this part of me and this part of my body healed. It was more, I learned that I could show up in my life even feeling like absolute shit. Because I created this story in my mind that if I didn't feel energetic and all of these things that I had created my past identity on, that I wasn't worthy to show up. So it was more the process of, even in the storm, even in the trial, I am still just as worthy, and I do still have love to give. So it really helped me in that way. And then the other way it helped me was it reinstilled hope in me that I didn't give up, because I'd sort of gotten to a place where I lived in Australia at this time. I live in New Zealand now, but I'd gone through like all of the specialists, and I'd gone through all of the naturopaths, and I'd been seeking for an answer, and I'd lost that hope and I'd given up. So the journaling reinstilled that fire in me and made me realize that I was actually worthy of getting well, because I'd lost hope that I was even, maybe my path of life was going to be this forever. Maybe I'm just destined for suffering and horribleness. That's where I was at. And so it let me know that, no, you're worth fighting for. You're worth continuing to seek and find. And I now 5-6 years later, I still am struggling a little bit with my health, but I would say I'm 70% better than what I was. And that's thanks to not giving up hope, keeping searching and finding new answers and trying new things.
What was the biggest obstacle to you as far as becoming consistent with your practice, with your journaling practice? Because that's something that I struggle with, is doing it consistently. And then of course then I beat myself up over it and like, oh well, I haven't journaled in 5 days or 5 weeks and whatever, and then I just kind of fall off the wagon.
Great question.
Yeah, that is a really good question. And firstly, you're not alone. All of the women that I've worked with, but it's the number one obstacle, right? And I think that I was able to work through this obstacle originally because I knew it was going to be an obstacle. So I knew that I was a person who has always struggled with consistency. It's been sort of a theme through my life that I do find consistency hard. And so when I was coming into this at the beginning, I said to myself, Hayley, this is going to be hard. And I think that that is something that we need to do, is that we need to expect things to be hard, because anything worth having is never easy to attain. And so it was sort of that mindset of knowing it was going to be difficult. So then I set parameters around that to set myself up for success. So like I said, I started with the 5 minutes, 2 sentences. And that was from self-reflection on me, because I knew that usually I like to try and set the bar really high. The nature of my life was like all in or not at all. And my mind wanted to say, all right, you're going to journal for 30 minutes every morning and you're going to fill up like 5 pages. Like, that's what you want to say to yourself.
Yep.
And so I really pulled myself back and I said, well, no, you already feel like a failure right now. So let's not set yourself up for more failure. That's the last thing I needed. So I said, well, what is something super attainable that I know I can show up and do? And 5 minutes and 2 sentences was attainable to me. And what that allowed was, it allowed it to be a space of grace for myself, because I knew that it wasn't actually the words that I'd write on the page that mattered. It was actually showing up that mattered, showing up for myself. Because it's a radical act of self-love, showing up for you, because everything in your mind's telling you that you don't want to, or it's not worth it. So actually coming and sitting there at my table every day and opening the page and knowing I'm going to write 2 sentences created the space for the magic to happen. And some days I literally have journal entries that say, I don't feel like journaling today. I feel like an idiot. I've got nothing to write. Like I've got sentences like that. But it was because I'd made that commitment to myself that there would be 2 sentences in 5 minutes no matter what. It allowed me to be successful. So some days I would show up for my 5 minutes and I'd write for 15. Some days I'd show up and 5 was all I got. But it allowed it the space to grow without too much pressure for it to be something. I wanted it to become what it was meant to be, not what I thought that it should be, if that makes sense.
How long did it take to start feeling some growth from it?
I would say 2 weeks.
2 weeks, that's fast.
The first few entries, I felt really silly. And this would be, part of where my self-worth was from, like thinking about what everybody else would think. And I was sitting here on my own, writing to myself, worried what other people would think of me doing that. I'm like, Hayley, no one's watching you. No, like, this isn't for anyone else. This is a sacred space between you and you, and I guess it took me 2 weeks to let my guard down with myself and allow things to start flow a little bit more. And once that hit, I was off and running. Like, I was unstoppable. So my first journal that I bought, I filled it up in, I think, 6 weeks. And then from there, I almost got addicted to it, but in a real healthy way. I've got a bit of addictive personality. But once I started seeing how it was making me feel, I didn't want to start a day without it, because I was like, this is diffusing my anxiety. It's making me feel so much better. I've got clarity, and it gave me these feelings that I was just not willing to live without anymore. And it sort of became like my oxygen in the mornings, that I just needed to sit and write and process. And it took off from there. And then for a solid 2 years, I was writing for at least 45 minutes every single morning.
Well, it's really interesting that you say that about feelings. Brene Brown just came out with a book that said that the average human can only identify 3 emotions. Through your writing, have you been able to delve deeper into your emotional bank? And what is that like for you?
Totally. My journal has been a real journey of getting comfortable with the full emotional scale. I used to only feel like it was okay to feel those top level emotions like joy and happiness and energetic. And I thought that that was all that was worthy. But my journaling has shown me the huge array. It's the pendulum. When you have this, you have to have this. So it's not about trying to fight those lower level emotions, but to embrace them as well as part of the the swing of the pendulum, and really learning to sort of bring my pendulum more into balance, exploring those emotions. And I did a real season of even like emotional literacy, of understanding it. So I'd sit and I'd say, what am I feeling? Try and identify what it was, and then identify, where in my body am I feeling it? Is it in my solar plexus? Is it in my mind? Like sometimes I'd even feel it in my feet or my legs, and just seeking to understand myself, how I'm feeling and how those feelings were showing up, and then deciding whether that was a feeling I wanted to shift or I wanted to dwell in, like, and giving myself grace that it was okay to feel that way. If I was feeling really low or just a bit like a bit blah, it was okay to sit in that. And then I'd ask myself, well, what do I need in this space? Instead of just trying to be like, oh no, like slap some joy on it, like, oh, that whole motivation culture of like, no, you're okay, woo, it's fine. Like, that's not dealing with it. That's putting a band-aid on something. And so instead just saying, yeah, I do feel this way today. What does Hayley in that moment need right now? Giving her love and grace. And then through doing that, it was sort of like a scientific experiment where I then got to see that by loving her right where she was and giving her what she needed, I so gently then just came back over here to these feelings instead of trying to force it here, because then what happens is you then force it straight back there and you're going boom, boom, boom. Instead, just like a slow, I don't know, just calm and peace and understanding.
That's profound.
You talk a little bit about how you can use journaling to kind of grow through things and solve things for yourself and kind of come back to yourself. In that process, do you go back very often and reread entries that you've made?
I do. Some, not all the time, but sometimes. I'm a real highlighter. So as I journal, I know I'm journaling just for me. So I know no one else is ever going to read it. So then I highlight for myself, like, what is future Hayley going to want to come back and remember? Or if I have any revelations or big moments of growth. But then I do go back every now and then, read back over my old journals, and I love to identify where prayers have been answered and where she was then and where she is now. And I love to see the nature of that growth. And I also like to go back and find the nuggets of wisdom that my soul gave me in that moment. Because sometimes I could have written about something and something came through for me that was just so beautiful in the moment, and we can forget. So I like to go back and read from that place of wisdom as well. But yeah, I do. I've got my stack of journals. They're in like a tub under our bed, and I do pull them out every now and then. I think it's really nice to have them. It's like you've written a legacy, you know. But at the same time, my journals are not for other people's eyes. Some people write in a way that, oh, my children are going to have these. I don't want my children reading some of the stuff in my journal. I feel like your journal needs to be a place where you feel safe to be completely uncensored. Write about, like, some of the things I've written about are the darkest parts of me that I wouldn't even sit and talk to my husband about, because some things are just for you. And so some of that stuff's in my journal. So it's not for anyone else, but it's just for me.
On your website, you open with a quote that I just love. You say, "There are few things more powerful than a woman who knows who the heck she is." I'd like to know, who are you and why that quote?
Ooh. That quote is my own quote. I say it all of the time. And I guess that quote comes from the juxtaposition of who I was and who I am now. And looking back at the woman who thought she knew who she was, but she didn't, and seeing how little personal power she had. I was so afraid to say what I really thought, or I would do things because other people wanted me to, and I let the world and other people guide my path instead of me guiding my path and standing in my power. So me now, as a woman who knows who the heck she is, she makes decisions from her own place of alignment instead of seeking for validation and seeking direction from outside of herself. Her direction comes from within. And because of that, she loves so much harder. You know, my relationships, how safe I feel to love wildly within my marriage, within like my siblings and people within my life is just uncanny compared to what it was before. I'm a woman who feels so okay with whatever happens next. I feel so safe within myself and my inner knowing that if shit freaking hit the fan tomorrow, I'm going to be fine. And that is a beautiful feeling. Great example of that is at the start of this year, I moved country from Australia to New Zealand. And it was something that I thought that I could never do. And even my husband's from here, but I was like, I can't do it. Like, your family's too different to mine. It's too different to what I've known. I can't do it. I want to do it for you, but I can't, kind of thing. But as this woman now who knows who she is, I was like, let's go. It's going to be amazing because I know it's going to be amazing. I don't need to know what's going to happen. I just know it's going to be amazing because I get to choose. I'm the creator of it. The circumstances don't matter as a woman who knows who she is. It's only you that matters because you know you can navigate it. I trust myself 100% that I can create those beautiful emotions and feelings because I've learned to navigate my own soul. One of my goals when I started discovering who I was I wanted to get myself to a place where I would be 100% okay and thriving, even if I lost everything. Even if I lost my husband and my family and I was just left as just me in this world, I wanted to know that I would still be thriving and love myself and be okay. And I feel like I would be. And because of that, you can take risks. You can love without bounds. You can be open, but at the same time, because I know myself, I've got such strong boundaries at the same time. So it's sort of this give and take of such openness, but also knowing what I will and will not accept as in my life. That's that woman. And I don't want to be anyone else but her. And even though, like I said, my physical body and my energy and everything isn't what I would dream to be perfect, but I just don't care anymore. And it's not going to hold me back because I know who I am.
How do you turn that around and through your business give that to other women?
I guess I offer a real balance of nurture and tough love. Like especially in my one-on-one coaching, I'm coaching very closely with a woman right now, and I like to give her what I call love punches, where sometimes it's got to come from a place of love, because I needed that. I needed someone to come and be like, wake up, Hayley, like stop. That encouragement to take responsibility for your life, but also the grace and the love and the nurture to feel okay to do that. And I feel like I create a very nice balance between the two for people so that they feel so safe to do it, but they also get given the nudge they need to step outside. Because I think sometimes we go too far with the grace and the love that we're like, no, it's fine that you're stuck in this rut. Stay in your stagnant pool forever. You're beautiful and fine. I'm more, yes, you are whole and perfect right here in the crap. Like right now, you can love yourself wildly, but let's bring her out of there as well. And let's seek for more. And let's like bring you on that journey, but love you right where you are. It's the balance between being content that if life never changed and I'm here forever, I'm going to be fine. But I love myself enough to keep moving forward as well. And I like to give that to people. And I also, I guess what I've found to be my own gifting is this ability to ask the right questions. So as I'm in conversation with women and they're letting me know what's going on, one of the services I offer, they fill out this questionnaire. It's over 200 questions.
Whoa.
And then I read back through their answers and just got this knack for making connections between different areas of your inner world and what's going on in your outer world, and then asking the right questions to crack the layer open. Because that's all that I see myself as the facilitator for you to just crack the layer. Because what, like if you just like if there's a little bit there, then the person can take it and peel it back. But I just facilitate the cracking so that then they can delve deeper and then support them in then what's the next layer, what's the next layer, what's the next layer. It's been a really beautiful thing to see myself doing that and facilitating that. It's me stepping into my power and knowing who I am as the woman that can ask the questions to support them in taking that journey.
So they fill out the questionnaire, and then what you do for them is you send them journaling prompts, or is it more involved than that?
So there's two different ways. People can just purchase the prompts on their own. So they fill out the questionnaire and then I create a personalized ebook for them. And usually they have between 150 and 250 prompts in them, like pretty deep ones. So I spend a lot of time on them. And then people can also purchase it then with one-on-one coaching. So through Voxer, then when they have their journaling sessions and they're digging into these questions, then we talk about it further and then I help them to dig deeper through that. So yeah.
That's so cool.
Hayley, how did you go from journaling for you and healing yourself and coming back to yourself to having your business and helping other women? What was that journey or that process for you?
It was a very unexpected thing. Journaling had always been something that was just so sacred and it was just for me. And I never saw it as being something that I would bring to the collective. Last year, so Soulful Journaling turned 1 a month ago. So it was November last year that I started.
The anniversary.
Thank you. But 6 months prior to that, I found myself just seeking a new business because I was in the online business world and I had been running a very successful social marketing business for 6 years alongside my teaching, which I did love, and I'd built something really great. But I was starting to notice that as I was stepping into more of my personal power and who I was starting to notice that parts of it were no longer aligning with me and my soul. And I was starting to feel this feeling that, oh, I really want to create something that's actually like birthed from me and something that is not just parts of me, but all of me. And I had this pull, and I'd been listening to a lot of women in business style podcasts, hearing about these women with these soul aligned businesses. And I was like, I want that. So it was a bit of a 6-month journey of me just being open, and journaling never popped into my mind because I was asking myself, well, what do I love? What is soul aligned for me? Like, what is something that I love that I want to bring to people? And I couldn't put my finger on it. And I'd been talking to my husband about it, and like, I just couldn't come up with anything. And then one morning I had done a killer journaling session, and it was just like beautiful revelation. It was tears, and oh, it was amazing. I went on a walk afterwards, and then suddenly it just hit me. Like, I can clearly see the moment. It was like I walked into a wall, and it was like, Hayley, journaling. Of course it was journaling. That's everything to you. Because I guess I hadn't realized that other women would need what I needed, because I was just in this season of like self-work, just looking inward. And I had this moment where suddenly I looked up and I was like, oh my gosh, everybody else needs this. But I think that I wasn't at the point in my own journey yet for it to become a business idea, because I wasn't ready. Like I hadn't built that personal power yet. And it was like the moment, like that final revelation that I had that morning. I can't even remember what it was, but it must have been the final layer that I needed to crack back, so that then I was now in a place to give what I had been receiving for so many years. And so I had the idea, and within 2 weeks, then I spent 2 weeks like just brainstorming. I had like pages everywhere, and I spent 2 weeks working on like my branding and choosing all of like the colors, the fonts, how I wanted it to feel, and really feeling into what I wanted this to be. And then I launched it, and then it's just been amazing ever since.
When Raquel brought the idea of interviewing you for the podcast, she said, I really want to do this, but I want the two of us to be committed to journaling for at least 2 weeks before we do the interview. And then you put up on your Instagram the advent calendar of journaling for Christmas.
Yeah.
So I invited a few of my friends along the journey, and they joined right away. Is that what you're also doing, Raquel?
Yeah. The Advent journal.
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, I want to ask Raquel a question. Have you been journaling every day?
I haven't been journaling every day, but I have been doing all of the prompts. So I have had a few days where I would do more than one prompt.
Fair enough. How did you come up with that idea, Hayley? I thought that was so cool because my kids have always loved advent calendars, and I've never had one for myself. This was the first one. I was like, I've got a calendar.
Oh my God, it was so fun when the idea hit me. I was shopping with my husband. We were doing, I think we were even Christmas shopping, and we were in Kmart, and we were waiting in the line to pay, and all of the chocolate advent calendars were there. And I said to him, I was like, oh my God, I just love advent calendars. And I said, I wish there was like an adult advent calendar. I know you can get ones with like wine and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, an adult advent calendar would be good. And then I just turned to him and I was like, oh my God, Bevan, I'm doing a journaling advent calendar this year.
Brilliant.
At that time, I sort of laughed at myself. I was like, oh, how silly. I was like, I know that I would love that. And I was like, oh, a few people might do it. And then I put it up, and it was, to date, my most popular post ever. I think I had like
Congratulations.
500 shares on it, and like 700 saves or something like that on this post, and people were just so keen for it, and I was like, oh my gosh. And this is where you've got to, I guess, knowing that whole thing of talking about knowing who the heck you are, knowing who the heck I am has meant trusting my own creativity. And so when I get an idea like that, old Hayley would have been like, that's silly, that's stupid, no one's going to want to do that. But when I have that feeling and I have that idea, I have to do it because I know that someone's going to want it. And I really did set up the advent calendar as not a deep dive, peel back the layers of who you are type thing. It's more of I set it up from a space of what kind of feelings do mean Christmas to me, and what kind of things do I want people to cultivate in their lives around this time of year. And then how can I put that into really simple 5-minute prompts that are easy and bite-sized, can just help you cultivate more joy, generosity, reflection around this time of year.
So maybe the three of us could each talk about, since we're working on the advent calendar, each take a moment and talk about what did we learn from it.
Well, that sounds good.
I delved into it already knowing I've had some really mixed feelings about Christmas and Christmas shopping, stress around the holiday time. And for the past several years, although I love seeing my family, the rest of the holidays just seem so overwhelming to me. So I knew all that before going in. Yesterday's prompt, I think, was my most favorite. And it said something like, talk about your most favorite memory from Christmas. And I couldn't really think of one, but I had several like just blurbs pop up, and some really funny ones that as soon as I was done writing it, I shared with my youngest daughter because she was sitting with me on the couch. What it did for me is it kind of brought up the simpler times of Christmas, the not so hectic, the not so I'm in charge, the not so. So the funniest memory that I'll share really quickly is when I was in high school, and I probably was a sophomore. My brother was 1 year ahead of me. He was a junior. He hadn't gone Christmas shopping, and it was Christmas Eve. Well, he went out way too late, and everything was, so he came home with McDonald's for everyone. And he put in my stocking, he put McDonald's chicken nuggets. So when I woke up in the morning, everybody had McDonald's with their stockings, and my stepmom had a fit. She was like, we can't eat that, that's been out all night, that's terrible. And she was so angry with him for not like thinking it through and thinking of people, and because she had all these expectations like that you have to fit, so she wouldn't let us eat it. So my brother sat down at the table and he ate everybody's McDonald's to prove to her that he was not going to get sick. And I guess even though that's like a crazy memory, in many ways it's one of my favorites because it really isn't about the expectations. It's just like the cuteness of that's family. That's what he did. And it's a really great memory. What was your favorite prompt, and what are you learning?
I felt a little ambivalent about it being Christmas focused because
Fair enough.
Christmas is it's a little fraught for me with emotion. Didn't grow up with the stereotypical winter wonderland kind of Norman Rockwell Christmas. So I was a little nervous about that. The prompt that I think brought me maybe the most joy was the one for 15 days until Christmas, about making a list of your highlight moments from the past year. Literally the very first thing that popped out for me was starting this podcast.
Yay!
That was literally the first thing, because Hayley, and you sort of talked about this a little bit too, of past you would just talk yourself out of things like, oh, nobody wants to know about that, or nobody wants to hear that. And I did that for years about either having a podcast or doing a blog or anything like that, because nobody wants to hear that. In this year, I was all in, and I thought, you know what, this is exactly what I want to do. I'm doing it. That prompt really made me focus on the really awesome things that have happened this year. I was able to make a list, which, kind of surprised me a little bit. And I took the time to reflect and own the really awesome things that have happened this year. The hesitancy that I had at the beginning really faded away and brought me to a place of recognizing all of the great and joyful things. So thank you, Haley, for creating the advent calendar, because it really put me in a reflective space so that I could take the time to really think about what's going on in my head and not just sort of swirling around in all of it.
How about you, Haley? What did you do that advent calendar, and what did you learn?
Yeah, so for me, I really resonated with what both of you have said, and were both what I was hoping to create with that. The whole idea of, like, for you, Jennifer, reflecting back and finding those little moments of amazingness and realizing that it isn't about how much food we can make and all of this, but it's those little moments that actually matter. And then it makes you feel okay that, okay, you don't need to be it all for your kids, because there's going to be those little moments for them. They're going to remember the smallest, silliest little things anyway. It helps to put you at ease. But for you, Raquel, the idea of allowing Christmas to not just be about everyone else, but it's the time to reflect back in on yourself and have joy and pride, and take a moment to be proud of yourself and for how far you've come this year. Because for me, it was more about recreating my own ideas and beliefs around Christmas, because Christmas, just like everything else, can be something that we put labels on top of. And
Mhm.
we want to expect it to be a certain way. And like you both said, that you both have those sort of negative feelings as well around Christmas, which, I mean, we all do.
Mhm.
And one for me that I have would be disappointment, because as a child, Christmas was so magical, and like it was a day that you wait for. And then as I became an adult, I've had years of Christmas where I left feeling disappointed because it wasn't what it used to be.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So for me, the prompts have been more around, well, stop wishing for it to be something it used to be and create it for what you want it to be now. What is
Right.
Christmas for Hayley in 2021? How do I want to feel? What do I want to reflect on? How do I want to move in generosity and joy? And what is that going to look like for me this year? So that when Christmas rolls around in 6 days' time, I can be more present in the day. And I've done this little background work, even though there's such simple prompts. But what they've done is they've created this fresh understanding and identity that I get to stand in on the 25th of December and enjoy myself more and be present. And like you said, not be, it's my hope that for other people, like it's been for me, these prompts will help you that on the day we won't get caught up in, I'm so stressed, I've got to do all of this, because then I stop and I think, oh, remember that list I wrote about feelings that I wanted to create around Christmas and the things that make me feel the Christmas spirit and the things that I'm so proud of myself for and how I can be generous. And when you know all of those things, because we know them, but they're so buried deep down that we forget them on the day and stress takes over. But when
Mhm.
you bring all of those things to the foreground, we suddenly going about our day differently and we're doing things differently. Even if it's 5% different, it's huge change. It's just
Mhm.
about that little shift in perspective. Instead of looking here at all of the things that are stressing me out and negative, I go, ooh, over here there's all of this amazingness and I'm going to choose that. And that's what it's been for me.
Nice. That's beautiful. You said that this particular set of prompts was sort of surface level, and then you have others that dig deeper. What does dig deeper mean to you, and what do some of those prompts look like?
The nature of the prompts that I usually put up on my page, so every second post is usually a journaling prompt. I always pose a question. So in the advent calendar, there's just the first step, the posing the bigger question.
Mhm.
And then the digging deeper is where I then ask more questions in relation to the question. And I
Mm.
feel like that's where we have the real opportunity to dig deep. It's not just about identifying the first thing, but then saying, well, why? Well, why? Well, why? Well, why? And a lot of digging deeper for me involves going back in time and tracking back. If I identify a feeling or a belief, say, that's holding me back, I like to track that back and go, okay, well, when's the first time I remember feeling that way? When's the first time I acted that way? Who was there in my life that also had this belief that I took influence from? And that's the digging sort of into the soil to get to the root, because until we find the root, it's always going to grow back. We can pick the top of the weed off, but
Yeah.
until you pull it out at the root, that sucker's just going to grow straight back. And the root is quite often something from childhood or adolescence or an experience. Our experiences create our reality, so we need to dig into those to see where they come from. Prompts that I put up last night was about, for women in particular, when we feel guilty to rest. This whole idea of like, if I take time, if I lay on the couch for an hour and don't do anything, I'm a shit human being. Like this idea, which is a false belief. And so to me, the first prompt would be like, okay, what makes me feel guilty for resting? And identifying those things, but then digging deeper is, okay, let's track that back. Where did I get that from? Was my mum like that? How did my mum act in terms of rest? What beliefs did I gain from that? What experiences have I had that have made me to believe that that's true? And then I go, well, what is the truth? If I am to rest, what are the positives of that? How are people positively impacted? So it's the question, and then it's the, okay, well, what's more to this?
You know what's really interesting about you saying that is on Thanksgiving this year, I had one of those mom freak out meltdowns because I wasn't getting enough help. And I thought I was freaking out about all that. And then towards the end of it, as I tried to dig deeper, I didn't journal it, but I tried to think it all through. I realized that if I didn't give up these expectations about having everything perfect and the perfection and blah, 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 I was putting all that same stuff that was put on me onto my girls. And I was like, why are you doing this? This does not have to be like this. And I finally realized that that's what I was doing, is just perpetuating the cycle that started somewhere in my family. I realized that my mom always did all that work, that she always took it on herself, and we didn't really help her very much either. And then here we are. And I was like, why am I doing this? Like that was that similar process to what you're talking about.
And that moment of awareness carries so much power. And that's really where the power lies in journaling and in this thought process, is once you see something for what it is, you can't unsee it. And because you can't unsee it, change occurs. Because next time you'll catch yourself doing it and you go, oh, there I'm doing that thing again that I identified. And then you make a little shift and you make a little change. It's when we live life just on this hamster wheel, never stopping to check in or identify what's going on. We stay stuck in the cycle until we identify, awareness is brought light on it, and then change happens.
So powerful.
Very. So Hayley, you've worked with, I'm sure, so many women, with journaling and making progress based on their journaling, without giving any specific details, obviously, because that's all private. But can you give us an example of maybe a success story that you've had with some of your clients?
Oh, so many beautiful moments of revelation. I love those moments when women say like, oh my gosh, no wonder I was feeling that way. And that's the beautiful moment. I'm getting goosebumps talking about it, because when you suddenly understand, like when a woman goes from feeling out of control and everything's happening to her, and suddenly she goes, oh my gosh, no wonder. It's like she's put the puzzle pieces together and she can see, and she goes, oh my, like, of course I'm feeling that way. And she understands, like that's the big power moments for me. And they happen sometimes with the smallest thing. Sometimes I'll get a message from someone that I don't know that just did one of my free prompts that I put up, and it was a moment like that for her. And that is just phenomenal. And I love that. And then with my closer coaching, like coaching at the moment, we're like in the trenches right now. Like our box of messages going back and forth are like 10, 15 minutes long, where she's having this real awakening of why she's feeling so frustrated and how she has been trying to be everything for everyone and not stopping to take that time for herself and build feelings of resentment and all. And like, there's just so many clicking in moments where she's noticing that all of these, like, say she had these 10 issues she'd identified, she's realizing that all 10 are actually the one. And the one
Wow.
is loving myself, knowing myself, and having self-worth. I find that it always comes back to that.
Mhm.
Always comes back to that. Yeah, those real powerful click moments when they realize, and that's liberating. I love getting to witness that moment of liberation. She stands up and she stands tall and proud and goes, well, I understand. That's the really disempowering feeling, is when you feel like you're just in the chaos. There's, I see it as like leaves going everywhere, and you're just one of those leaves in the wind. The wind blows you this way, I'm that way. It blows that way, I'm that way. And suddenly you have that moment where you become the anchor, and you anchor down, and the storm's happening around you, but you're not moved because you understand.
Oh, that's so powerful.
Mm.
How great that is for you that you get to help facilitate that for so many women.
I pinch myself. Oh, I have those moments where I go, how do I get to do this? And then I realize I'm putting my worth too low. And I go, well, no, of course you get to do this. Look at all the work you've done. And this is me handing the baton and just learning to stand in my own power of that. And I'm learning through this process to trust that I have real value to give as well. So it's really a moment of liberation for myself at the same time as it being for the women as well.
How important are the actual journal, the pens, the highlighters? What do you think about the tools for this trip?
Mm. Yes. Oh, I talk about this in one of my getting started modules, where of course we can journal with a piece of paper and a half broken pencil. As long as you can journal on a napkin if you needed to. But like I said, with the wanting to set yourself up for success, you want to feel pulled to this place. And I like to try and create my journaling not just as another thing on my to-do list, but a ritual that is this space that I want to be in. And I'm just like, oh, that journal's pulling me. I'm vibing with that. And for that reason, I do think it is important. I mean, it's not at the top of the priority list, but it is important to buy a journal that you love, that you look at and you go, I want to write in that. It's very important to have pens that flow. I've been in a journaling session and had a pen that's like working and then it's not, and it's frustrating. It's like, oh, you want a flowing pen for when that, it's like and then like with your highlighters, I always have highlighters on hand because it's a declaration that I'm saying there's going to be phenomenal stuff that I'm going to need to highlight here. I see my highlighters as a declaration of, I'm going to need these babies because the magic's coming. And creating yourself that space where you have the tools that you love, it just creates more of a want to rock up. Even though I'm going to rock up whether I feel like it or not, I think that's very important. Whether you feel like journaling or you don't, you show up anyway, because it's about the showing up. It's not about the doing. The pretty journal helps me to show up.
So, how do you feel about journaling apps or journaling on your computer as opposed to actually handwriting?
So, there's actually been research done that shows that physically putting pen to paper has more of an impact on the deeper parts of your healing, which I get that. Like, I understand that. Like, even if I do it myself, if I start typing compared to if I'm writing, you do notice the difference. And I think it's just, it's the physical, yes, you have to move your hands to type, but it's the physical act of like seeing that come out and onto a page in front of you. It's more of a soul outpouring. Obviously, I would say, like, if you're only going to journal on a computer, I'd be like, go for it. It's going to be beneficial, of course. But the research does show that actually physically writing brings more healing and it brings more understanding, and it's more of a physical act of like, I am releasing onto the page. You've had something physical, you're creating something physical instead of it becoming something that can be deleted. And I don't know, we've got this idea that the stuff on the computer isn't always completely real, whereas if it's in front of you and it's your handwriting, there's something more real about it.
So, do you carry a journal with you? Say it's the middle of the day and you're out running errands and a thought occurs to you. Do you have a journal with you to write that down, or do you wait?
So I'm only an at-home journaler, but if I am out and about and I have a thought, I put it in my notes. I use Evernote for everything, so I'll put it in Evernote. I've actually got an Evernote titled, usually I even title it like journal ideas, so I'll have even an idea when I'm out and about, or if I have a thing myself, I pop it in there, and then in my next journaling session I'll open that up and then I'll dig through it then. But I do have clients that like to take their journal with them and they'll get it out and they'll do it there and then. But for me, my journaling is more, like I said, it's a ritual. For me to journal, I've got my cup of cacao, I've got my oils that I'm sniffing, I've got my spot that I sit where I look out over the hills. Like, it's a real experience for me. It's not I'll just quickly get it out and jot it down now. It's more of, I don't know, that's just my personal way, but that's not the only way.
Did you move into that, or did you do that from the beginning?
I set up that sort of ritualistic way right from the beginning, because again, like, I knew it was going to be hard. So I was like, well, what's going to make it easier for me? Okay, well, if there's a cup of tea waiting for me, I'm going to be there. If there's my favorite smells, I'm going to be happy. If I've got my nice music on, I'm going to enjoy myself. So I sort of set those parameters originally just to get myself there. And now they've become like a best friend. It's like my sacred space, and I just love it.
Do you think there's a book in you?
There is so a book in me. Yes, there is.
I feel it. I feel a book.
Yeah, I would absolutely love to write a book one day. My first ebook that I wrote was like a little mini version of that, because there's like a 30 entry journey, but it's written more in like a devotional-ish kind of style. But then the first half is all about journaling and how to set it up and all that sort of stuff. And I loved writing that. I would love to write something more about like the nature of peeling back the layers, like that whole idea, tending to your soul garden. I love analogies, so it would probably be based around some kind of analogy. But yeah, I would love to see myself doing that in the future.
What's in the near future for you and for Soulful Journaling?
In the near future for me, I'm really feeling into this new season of writing these personalized prompts and doing the one-on-one coaching and feeling that out as I go. So it's only something I launched last month, and already from when I've launched it, you're never really ready. And if I waited until it was perfect, I'd never do it. So I did it when I wasn't ready. And from doing it when I wasn't ready, I'm identifying, okay, I'm going to tweak this, going to do that. So this next 2 weeks, where I'm sort of taking time off over Christmas, I'm going to spend really delving into that and forming it into what I really want it to look like. So that's going to be next. But then I've also got a physical journal, guided journal, which I've fully written. It's done and it's ready. I've just got to do all of the background printing stuff and sorting out. From being in New Zealand but wanting to sell in America on Amazon, it's actually much harder than what I thought it would be. So working out all of that and getting that printed and starting that venture too, I'm really wanting. It's called the Soulful Journal, and each day it's got a set of questions, and then it has a digging deeper prompt, and then it's got like check-in pages where every 20 entries you realign and all that sort of stuff.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. I love what it is. I've just got to get it into a physical thing and get it out in the world. But I really see that, and my self wants to hold myself back and be like, oh no, like no one's really going to want it. But there's something in my soul that really feels like it could be huge. You know, like the 5-minute journal.
Yeah.
They've sold like over 2 million copies, and I look at what I've created and I'm like, what I've created is just as good, and I feel like people need it. And so I'm going through this season of really believing in myself that it will sell and it will become huge. And so that's something that I'm journaling into that right now. I'm journaling into my own blocks with abundance, my own blocks with financial mindset and that sort of thing, and getting ready to birth that baby into the world.
So cool. I only have one more question for you, and I feel very compelled to ask it. What do you feel like your feminist message is?
This is something that's really been a huge journey for me. I grew up hating being a woman and never identifying with being a woman. I remember being like 7, 8 years old and crying to my mum and being like, Mum, I think I was meant to be a boy. I don't feel right. being a girl. That's been a huge journey for me in my own self-love, like learning to love the feminine parts of me. So I was always very tomboyish. All my friends were boys, like very just in it, and I just wanted to be with my dad all the time. And I'm like, oh, all you girls, like I had this thing where I didn't like girls when I was growing up, and because I just didn't identify.
Sure.
It's been this beautiful journey of embodying this feminine part of me that is just raging now, even down to the fact that for 9 years I lost my period for 9 years, and my hormones were so out of whack. And as I've gone on this journey of dropping into my feminine, my cycles come back, and like all of these things about what it means to be a woman. Like I never wanted children. The thought of having children made me feel sick. And now I'm this woman today that I just cannot wait to birth a child. Like there's been a real radical evolution within me of embracing what it means to be a woman and the nature of the journey for a woman of learning to stand in her personal power. Because, you know, that's being a woman on this earth, that is always going to be a lesson for us to learn, because the world wants to push us down and wants us to not feel personal power. So I think when I reflect back as a child, I was trying to identify more in the masculine because I saw that as being the place where the power was. So I was like, well, I want to be over here because like I can be powerful and I can be who I want to be. But if I was over here with all of the feminine energy, well, then I can't. Yeah. And so it's been a real journey of me learning that I can be over here in all of my glory as a woman and embodying that and step into my personal power. And so that, like, I got the goosebumps again.
Yeah, that's awesome. What a great message.
Oh, it's just been beautiful. And then from journeying that myself, being able to help foster it in other women, and I'm just so for the ladies, like, and I love feeling that. I love feeling that because I used to be so not for the ladies, and because of that I was disowning myself. You know, I was living outside of my body. I couldn't identify with all of this, and now I just so fully identify with her, and I love this woman's body, and I love what it means to be a woman, and really seeing the role that I have to play as a woman, and the fact that it is just as important. You know, for me, it's not about demeaning the masculine, honoring the two sides and seeing. And I was even talking about this with my husband yesterday, and I was saying to him that it's just been so beautiful being able to see how your masculinity is just as important as my femininity, and that together they create the whole of the one. But when you've got one trying to like, that doesn't work. But seeing how how when women step into their power and men step into their power in the way that they're meant to, not in the way that they overstep their power, creates the wholeness and the beauty and the yin and the yang, you know. For me, that, and I'm still on that journey now.
You said it so well.
That's a beautiful message, Hayley. That's a beautiful message and thought to end on. So thank you for those words, and thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed this conversation and love what you guys are doing. I've been following along with your Instagram and seeing the conversations you're having, and then to know that it's something for you, Raquel, that has been a stepping out of the comfort zone and believing in yourself just makes it even more special, and totally seeing both of you standing in your personal power, and I love it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was awesome having you on.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for listening today. We will be back with more Madness Cafe next week. You can find us on Instagram at Madness Cafe Podcast, or email us at madnesscafepodcast@gmail.com. Bye.